Hi, my name's Ian Dinwiddy and I've been invited by Parent and Professional, a coaching business, to record this video blog for you. And it's all about what HR needs to understand, needs to know about supporting working dads as we return to the workplace, kind of post this kind of crazy COVID-19 world. I'm not really talking about returning to work because for a lot of people, depending on technology and sort of support and setup like that, home setup, a lot of people have been working really successfully at home, remote working for many months now. What I want to talk to you today is about the process of returning to the workplace, what it means for working dads and what HR professionals can do to make that process as easy as possible. And there are a number of aspects, three key aspects that I want to talk to you today to give you some kind of insight into some of the pressures that working dads are feeling, some of the pressures that their families are feeling, and some of the things that we can do collectively to make the return to the workplace process as smooth and as enjoyable and as stress-free as possible for everyone involved. Okay, so there's three things that I want to talk to you today about. And the first one is around childcare assumptions. The second one is about fear. And the third one is about conflict. Okay, so we'll start with the first one around childcare assumptions. So some of those childcare assumptions that we take for granted, that schools are open, that nurseries are open, that grandparents are able to look after the children. These assumptions are being blown out of the water by COVID. And as we look to transition to go back into the workplace, then HR professionals need to be very aware of the pressures that this lack of childcare provision is putting upon parents, working parents. And what we need to understand from a perspective of working dads is that working dads who have children at home, if we just assume that they are just going to come back to work because they are men, we create an enormous challenge for equality across the board, not just within that particular workplace, but for the individual families. We can no longer assume that those family setups that serve parents really well, sort of 12 months ago, those don't really exist in the same way anymore. And if we say to our working dads, right, everyone needs to be back in workplace, there are a number of issues directly related to childcare that we need to be considering. And what we need to be doing, HR professionals, is we need to understand that the rules of the game have changed essentially, and that if we put pressure on any one individual parent to return to work, then something in their personal environment is put under pressure. So typically within a heterosexual couple, then if you're forcing a man to go back to work and saying, right, everyone's back, across the board, and you're just assuming that his partner will pick up the slack and will do the childcare, then that's creating an enormous amount of tension. Now, the second point I wanted to make really and talk about is fear. Now, we've got this issue around, the economy is under an enormous amount of pressure. We're facing the worst recession in, I would say, living memory, in any memory. And for men who typically are the breadwinners within a heterosexual couple, then what they are facing is an enormous degree of fear in terms of their job ultimately and their role as a provider and as a breadwinner. And if you are putting pressure on men to return to work, they may well feel that they can't say no. Okay, they may fear about COVID, they may fear about picking something up, contracting COVID in the workplace, on their commute, especially in the southeast where the use of public transport, whether it's the tube, the train, buses, is much more prevalent than in other parts of the country. Dads are going to feel under an enormous amount of fear, on the one hand for their job, but also on the other hand, they're going to face the fear of contracting this horrible disease and then passing it on to their family. And so they're facing these two twin fears. And we need to understand that these fears are real and they are very, very apparent for dads in particular, especially around breadwinning responsibilities where, typically it is the man who earns more money, and that's what the family's success, the family's fortune, and the family's family goals are built upon the man going and earning a living. And men will not want to be seen, even more than usual, this is. They will not want to be the ones who shirk the job. There's a reason why men don't seek out extended parental leave, and they don't seek out formalised flexible working arrangements. It's because they fear not being committed, and they fear the implications for their job, their success, and ultimately for their ability to provide for their family. So it's a massive issue, and it's one that runs throughout the coaching work that I do with men, is that men want a different type of life, but they are afraid of losing everything if they were to stand up for what they really want to. And that makes it a really difficult time at the moment when we're thinking about returning to the workplace. So the third thing that we need to understand is around conflict at home. So during this current pandemic, and people have been working from home, then what we find in dual income couples is that there have, to a large degree, been a lot of quite pragmatic decisions about how and when people work, what the homeschooling arrangement is, what they're just looking after children, who's going to do what and when. Men are using some of that time, that extra time that they've gained in terms of not commuting. They're much more present with their families. They're realising to a large extent that they can't just lock themselves away in an office, a home study or up in the bedroom, and just crack on with work as if nothing's happened. Because actually in dual income households, then there's still both of you are trying to work at the same time. The kids need feeding, they need entertaining, they need supervising, they need homeschooling to a certain extent. And what we face with this move towards returning to the workplace is that we can create an enormous amount of conflict in the home if we're not mindful of some of those pressures. So imagine the scenario: you've got a senior manager within your business. He's always worked 5 days a week. He's always, he may have worked occasionally from home. He takes the odd bit of working from home time, maybe for Harvest Festival or Sports Day, one of those kind of signature events. But he's not this is a man who is not someone who regularly works from home. It's not built in. And actually, in the last 3-6 months, that's what he's done. He's taken the laptop, he's stayed at home, workplaces have been shut, and the outputs have been great. People have adapted. They've adapted to kind of endless Zoom calls. They've adapted to that remote working. We've started to, as a society, I think, to understand that some of the barriers around flexible working and remote working, they're not as insurmountable as we may have previously felt. So you've got this man. And now you're saying, actually, workplace is open. We've put in all these mitigating these measures to keep people safe. We've stopped hot desking. We've separated people out. We're offering staggered hours and that sort of thing. But we want people back in the office. We want FaceTime. We want to see you back and working. And this man who's been successfully juggling his wife's job, his job, he's been looking after the kids. Maybe he's been honest with his boss. He said, actually, I need to block out an hour in the morning, hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the evening. And I know friends of mine who do this, people I work with, people I coach, men who are blocking out time. They've been really proactive about what needs to be done, and they're staggering their start and end. They're working in the mornings, the evenings. I mean, it's tough, but it's what's needed to happen. And so, and life is successfully adapted. If you now say to that man, you need to return to the workplace, you need to go on that train where social distancing may or may not be good. Already those stress levels are building. We talked about the fear and the stress earlier. And now you've got the conflict. So that he's been put under pressure, you're putting him under pressure, the business is putting him under pressure to return to the workplace. And at home, his wife, his partner, is turning around and she's saying, well, hang on, I've still got my job to do as well. Now, I know your job is important for our family, but mine's important for the family too. We can't just stop doing it. If we ask that man to return back to work as if nothing has happened, then all we're doing is creating fear that he can't say no, and conflict at home that actually his partner is being put under pressure by her workplace as well, and they've got 2 children to look after, and just assuming that everything can go back to normal. You know, normally nursery was there, normally school was there, the babysitter maybe did a pick up after school for little 7-year-old James. Whatever it might be, then we need to understand that actually the rules of the game have changed, and they've changed really, really fundamentally. And as HR professionals, you need to understand the kind of pressure that men are facing. So we've got these three elements that we've been talking about today. Number one, not to assume that childcare is being done by someone else other than men. Okay. Second one is around fear, understanding the fears both in terms of disease and also fears around losing jobs, fears around breadwinning and losing that position within the family and losing the ability to provide for your family. It's a really powerful motivator for men. And the third one is to understand the conflict at home. What kind of conflict at home do you create when you say, right, everyone's back to work, no excuses, we need to be in work? Creates issues for men and women equally, but I think we tend to, the danger is that we ignore the impact that it has on working dads in particular. My name's Dinwiddy, and it's been a pleasure recording this video blog for you today.